Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Hood Conservative with Laverne Spicer, who is unfortunately under the weather today. So today I will be your host. My name is Trevian Kutti, and you know me for being controversial. So today we are definitely going to touch on a controversial topic. We'll be joined by Judge Joe Brown and Chad O. Jackson. We had some technical difficulties with Judge getting on with us last week, and he'll be joining us today. Chad O. Jackson, if you don't know him by name, he was the man behind the Uncle Tom documentary with Larry Elder and Candace Owens and Brandon Tatum. Definitely, probably one of my favorite conservative personalities on X. Such a joy to hear him talk. He's so on history and Black America and Marxism and what is best for the Black community moving forward today. I do want to thank Laverne for allowing me to sit in for her today. And I believe that Judge will be joining us within the next 5 minutes. And I also believe that Chad should be in the green room. So, G, if you see him there, why don't you bring him on in? Are you there? Can we
Yeah,
see
can you
you?
hear me?
There
Yeah, I
you
can
are.
see you. How you
How
doing?
are you?
Good,
Thank
good.
you
Just
so
trying to.
much for coming.
Yeah,
Thank you
yeah,
for
for
coming
sure.
in today. But I think it was a week ago you put up the post on the work that you were doing on Dr. Martin Luther King. And as
Mhm.
someone whose grandfather told her stories about Martin Luther King growing up, which was the opposite of this, hero, godlike figure that Black America, portrays him as. My grandfather told me, he was stealing money while with the Southern Leadership Conference.
Mhm.
He should have had his degree revoked because he was plagiarizing other works. And when I would say this in school, even as a young girl, my teachers would hit me with a ruler when I told them my grandfather said Martin Luther King is a bad man. So
So
I've
they were
been
trying to
getting
beat you into submission, huh?
I've been getting whooped behind Martin Luther King for a long time. So I am so happy you are here. This is going to be amazing. I'll let you
Where
go
did you
ahead
grow
and
up?
Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay, so you grew up in Nebraska.
But
Okay,
my family is from Mississippi and Arkansas, so
got you.
and Louisiana. So they were always in that mix. And my grandfather, who is a military veteran, definitely would not be a part of that movement. No way, no how. So when I saw you putting that together, I said, "Oh my God, I gotta call Chad because I've taken so much of a beat down
Mhm.
behind just believing." My grandfather who lived it. So I want to support you in any way we possibly can. So I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself to everybody.
Well, I appreciate that. Would you consider yourself more of a Southerner or a Midwesterner?
Well, I'm a Midwesterner raised by Southern grandparents and parents.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
that Southern never goes away. You get educated differently being in a place like Omaha, Nebraska. Omaha actually right now is one of the top 5 fastest growing cities in the United States. So you'll get a good education because the crime is down. The only thing that people did on Saturdays was put on their red everything and go big red Nebraska. So there wasn't much to complain about growing up. My grandfathers, they had gardens. We would go every Saturday morning, pick greens, pick beans, weed out the garden. So you get that Southern, that part never left, my upbringing. So I'm definitely, I think I'm blessed. I learned how to cook. I can make a mean banana pie without the bananas and the pudding.
That's a rare trait with women these days, knowing how to
Yeah.
cook.
So, but go ahead and
Well,
tell everybody about yourself.
yeah, so my name is Chad Jackson. One second. All right. My name is Chad Jackson. I'm a Southerner. I was born and raised here in Texas, and I own a plumbing company. So I work the trades, and I also am a filmmaker. A lot of people uh, are taken aback when they hear those two professions, but I strongly believe that it's a man's responsibility to work both with his brain and with his hands. And so I got involved in filmmaking and video editing when I was in high school, and it stuck with me ever since. And so I'm 34 years old now, and I'm still at it. So we have this project coming out on January 20th, which is also known as Martin Luther King Day. And my intention with this project is to expose who he really was, but not only who he was, but what the civil rights movement was really all about. It wasn't this pro-black movement that we're taught to believe it was. In fact, the civil rights movement is responsible in many ways for the degradation of black culture today. A lot of the gains that were that Black people experienced from the end of slavery to the 1960s were lost in just a matter of years as a result of the civil rights movement. So my hope is to expose that. I know other people are doing things to expose that. Come January 20th, I know Virgil Walker has some things cooking up. I know Vince Everett Ellison have some things cooking up, and others do as well. And I think it's high time that this truth be told.
I
I will
love
say that
that.
with my project, I'm still working on it. I'm diligently working on it, actually. And chances are I might not have it completed by January 20th, but I will have something out by January 20th. But my real goal is to have a bow on it uh, by so-called Black History Month at the latest. And I want to do a screening of the film in Atlanta. Yeah, a live in-person screening in Atlanta. So we'll see how that goes. We're working diligently to get it done.
That is so awesome. G, will you run that clip that Chad has, just a little preview of the project that he's working on? I am definitely going to be at your screening. So this is something, it's very personal to me, actually, because I've
Do you
taken
currently
so.
live in Atlanta?
No, no, no. I live in Chicago.
Okay. Okay. Oh, I knew
That's
that.
the clip. Can you run that?
But they would also go into these cities like they did in Birmingham.
But we definitely plan to have massive demonstrations in the state of Alabama this summer. We feel that the time has come.
A huge part of the reason why MLK was disliked by a lot of elders, both Black and white, was because he courted the allegiance of the youth.
They could not get the Black people to come in and help them, so he went into the schools.
In fact, we are now recruiting students by the hundreds and thousands to join what we refer to as our nonviolent army. And they will constitute the persons who will engage in these demonstrations all over the state.
These children didn't know what they were getting involved in. They thought they were going to be just getting involved in a parade or a march. Kingdom had brought all of the cameras down from up north, and they needed a show. And even now, people don't even know what that was. It was manufactured. The whole thing was set up.
And I will tell you, my grandfather told me that anybody telling you to get knocked upside the head over and over again and not do anything to fight back, that's your enemy. So that's how strongly I believed growing up that Martin Luther King was a bad man, because my grandfather had stories, him and some of his army buddies, that were trying to be recruited to come and do some of these marches. And they were like, over my dead body, they can all get shot. They can get hosed. They can get, bit by dogs. But it, unfortunately, Black people probably, this better be a powerful thing to wake up Black people and the myth that they've, grown up with about MLK, because,
Right.
to him, he could do no wrong. Everything he did was right. He was a minister. He prayed in jail. Nobody ever really wanted to look at it any differently. So I'm really, going to support
Yeah.
you on this, for you to be able to break through, all of the lies that, we've all grown up in our lifetime hearing over and over and over every January 20th or 15th, whichever day they want to make it.
Hmm. No, you're absolutely right. And might I ask, or may I ask, what year was your grandfather born? Do you know?
My grandfather was fought in the Korean War.
Hmm.
So if we try and age that, I'm going to say probably 1936 or somewhat 26, somewhere in there.
Okay. So he would have been around the same age as MLK. And
Yep.
you're absolutely right. I mean, the sentiments that your dad had
My
in
grandpa.
response, or sorry, your granddad, the response that your granddad had in response to the civil rights movement and a lot of things that they were doing is actually quite common for a lot of men that age. They weren't willing to get beat up across the head to push this agenda that only served to expand the role of the federal government. Many of them weren't having it, and this is the reason why uh, Martin Luther King went after the youth, as we demonstrate in that clip there. He understood that these youth were impressionable, they were naive, they didn't have anything to lose, and so he used them as soldiers. He used them as basically bait, if you will, to push this agenda. And so it was very nefarious. Um, it was very deceptive. I guess that's the best word to use, because to your point, the point that you made earlier of him being a pastor, he didn't even really believe in God like that. He writes in his papers, which I have 7 volumes of Martin Luther King's papers, that from the early age of 12, he rejected the deity of Christ, that he didn't believe that heaven existed, that he didn't believe basic tenets of the Bible. And so this is important to understand when you realize that, oh, this was a reverend. Well, why would he go on as a reverend if he didn't believe what the Bible said? Well,
Exactly.
the reason is because he had something more nefarious at play. He was a Marxist, really.
Now, over and over, I continue to hear about his CIA involvement. And when you
Mhm.
tell me you have 7 volumes of his work, did that reflect in his work? Were you able to depict any, pointers, any strategy out of those volumes, which today, if he was still alive, if he was not shot in 1968, we have no idea how bad, the situation for Black America would be right now. So, what did you get out of those volumes of his papers?
Well, what I got out of those volumes of those papers is that King didn't happen in a vacuum, nor was his rise to notoriety random. He did so with the help of very well connected people who even had connections with the Soviet Union. Stanley Levison, who wrote many of his speeches, including portions of the I Have a Dream speech,
Mhm.
was a communist financier.
Mm.
He was a treasurer for a communist front group there in New York City. And so Stanley Levison paid all of Martin Luther King's salary from like the 1950s to the day that he died, and even helped support Coretta after he died. So he had a lot of money behind him. He had a lot of planning behind him. All these cameras that showed up at all these marches wasn't random. It was Stanley Levison, who was a renowned publicist, I guess you could
Yeah.
say, insofar that he would organize news crews and cameras to be at the ready whenever they would do these marches. And as soon as, and what they would do was actually quite genius. They would recruit all of these kids to come from up north down south. They called themselves the Freedom
The
Riders.
Freedom Riders. Yep.
hmm So they would come down
Not all
south.
of them made it back home.
Exactly. So they would come down south, and they would participate in these marches. Now, the civil rights organizers purposefully didn't pull permits for these marches because they wanted for the police to show up, and they wanted them to show up with dogs and hoses and all the rest. And so naturally, the cameramen would be there at the ready, and they would strategically and specifically do things to try to agitate the police and agitate the dogs. And as soon as the police would react and get the spraying and get the sick in the dogs, that's when the cameras would start rolling, and then they would plaster this on television sets all across the country, so as to say, look at how
Historical version.
Negroes in the South are being treated. Never mind the fact that these weren't Negroes in the South;
The
these were
South.
people who were bussed down. So, and not only that, I think I'll be remiss if I didn't say that these tactics, or this policy of dispersing crowds that were unlawfully gathering, was not unique to Black folks. This was a common way of dispersing crowds all across the 20th century. They were doing it 30 years before the civil rights movement to all white labor unions who were going on strikes and who were in the streets agitating and doing the very same thing. There's a connection between these white labor unions and Martin Luther King insofar that many of their agents went to the same training camps, the same training schools, such as the Highlander Folk School there in Montegal, Tennessee. But to your question specifically about the CIA, I know that the CIA didn't have a charter, from my understanding, in the United States. The FBI was more active in the United States than the CIA was. However, when it comes to our own government, specifically the CIA, they were up to a lot of nefarious things as well. The reason is that people have to understand that the CIA has a lot of the same agenda as the Soviet Union and a lot of these Marxist countries, insofar that they want globalism is essentially what they want. They want a one world government. and Martin Luther King was useful in that agenda. And so it's to that extent, I think, that he was protected for all those years that he was alive until he was no longer useful. They
Right.
determined that he was better off. He was more useful to them dead than he was alive by 1968. So they made a martyr out of him. They erected a monument to him in Washington, D.C. And if you look at the etching on that monument, it says nothing about God. It says nothing about him being a reverend. It talks about his protest and
I
the
dream.
fact that he was an activist. The reason why that's important to note is because each year, anytime they want to push some new policy, again, that's going to expand the federal government, they invoke who? Martin Luther King. They say Martin Luther King would have wanted this. Martin Luther King would have, so they kind of use him as this kind of limitless credit card that they can cash in, play to
Right.
the emotions of the American people. The American people get behind something in the name of social justice or in the name of something that Martin Luther King would have supported, not realizing that they're giving up their rights to the federal government.
I always say if Martin Luther King, if he could see now, he would have gone to space instead of the mountaintop, because Black America is really, it's in a state of destruction. And
Hmm.
I spend time with a lot of young Black men. Actually, this last election, I did a 31 city tour registering nothing but Black men to vote,
Hmm.
and talking and engaging and hearing their stories. And all they wanted was change. It was no longer about what they've been through. It was no longer about the white man. It was no longer about any of that. They wanted change to survive. And that, I think, I made some really good friends, people who call me now that I had never met or would have never had the chance to meet. And they keep in touch, and they feel good about it. This is when Obama used the word hope. I don't know if that was a real thing, but right now I feel Black men who voted for change feel like they truly have hope to
Hmm.
be able to get a job, buy a house, feed their children, open a business. They're talking in those terms now. When with this previous administration, they were more worried about how they were going to keep their lights on and put gas in their car. So
Right.
it was one of the best experiences I've had in my life. A lot of people, well, why are you did you go up there by yourself? In some places I did go by myself. You have to
Yeah.
be able to approach openly and freely and genuinely. And so I feel good about the direction of Black men who are involved in what is happening in the country today. There are people who are, the opposite. They're the destructors of the path in which we would hope for Black America to strive and grow and prosper. But I would also like for you to tell people about your previous work, which I thought was phenomenal, and you did a part 2 because it was that good. So for people who don't know you, give them a little bit more past on your filmmaking excellence.
Yeah. So I actually, I'm going to give a brief backstory before I answer your question. So, as I said, I'm a owner of a plumbing company here in Texas. We do a lot of new construction. We built a Tesla service center in Fort Worth. We built a number of Chick-fil-A's and Starbucks and Victoria's Secret and jewelry stores and things of that nature. So I started that company when I was 25. I actually got into the plumbing trade shortly after high school. And I did so because my aspirations to go into filmmaking were kind of thwarted by the fact that I didn't have a lot of money at the age of 18 to do so. So going into a trade seemed to be the most practical. And like I said, I started in my company when I was 25. And then by chance, even though I dabbled in filmmaking when I was in high school, the opportunity represented itself when I was 26, when Justin Malone, who lives here in Dallas, was making a film about Black conservatives and decided to interview me for the film because he heard about me from the fact that I was involved in local Republican politics. So he asked if he can come to my office and interview me for this film that he was trying to make. And at first, I didn't want to do it. I didn't know what they were trying to do. It kind of felt to me like they were trying to make some like exploitative film, trying to take jabs at Black conservatives. But I looked into them and realized that they were legit, and finally decided to sit down for the interview. So they came to my office, they interviewed me. They were asking really good questions, and that became the buffer, if you will, for the film that they were going to make. And so they flew up to California and met with Larry Elder, and Larry Elder watched the footage and um, agreed to become the executive director for Uncle Tom, is what the film ended up being called. And so through Larry Elder, they got connections to such people as Candace Owens and the late Herman Cain and Carol Swain and Alan West and others who ended up being in the film. And it all started with that interview here in Dallas. So the film did well, and after the dust settled from part one, I was approached and asked if I wanted to come on as a producer and writer for part two. And I considered it. Again, I was running a very successful plumbing company at this time, and I decided to do it. I decided to relinquish my stake in the company that I had, because I owned it with a partner, and basically significantly downscale my services and go on to work for Malone Pictures to produce part two. And I agreed to do it under the conditions that we don't tell the same old tired Black Republican story of, oh, the Democrats are the real racists. The Democrats, wanted to keep us enslaved, and the Republicans freed the slaves. I wanted to move past that kind of surface level rhetoric and go deeper. And I was given creative license to really go into the research and tell the story as I saw it. And so that's how we ended up getting Uncle Tom Part Two. Now, if you watch Uncle Tom Part Two and compare it to Part One, you'll notice that they feel like two completely different films, and that's because they are. I think Part One is kind of like conservatism 101,
Right.
but it's kind of like the kiddie pool level. But
Gotcha.
then when you get to Part Two, and I actually stole this analogy from ABL, once you get to Part Two, you're in the deep end, doing butterfly strokes and stuff. So we wanted to really challenge our audience and take them deeper.
So where are you born and raised, Chad? And what
Here
was
in Texas.
what was your family philosophy?
Well, as far as our philosophy is concerned, um, it was more shown than said, I guess you could say. My dad is from Arkansas, just like one of your parents are.
Mhm.
And my mom's from Oklahoma, so we're Southerners through and through. And my dad had 13 brothers and sisters. Each of his brothers were involved in some kind of trade. My dad works in excavation, so he does a lot of large developments for new. He does a lot of the groundwork for new developments that come in. One of my uncles is a contractor, another is an electrician, another is a mason, another is on and on I can go. So they all are in some kind of trade, and I watched them as a little boy building things and adding rooms to our house and just doing things that, having a front row seat to watching men be men.
Right.
And my mother was a stay-at-home mom for a number of years until she decided to go to work. So that was my upbringing. Again, it was an experience that is reminiscent of the Black family prior to the civil rights movement, which unfortunately a lot of black kids don't get to enjoy these days. And so one of the reasons why I'm passionate about telling these stories is because I feel that our generation was robbed, and it was robbed by
People like
by
Martin Luther King.
yeah, it was, I mean, this is going to sound like shade, but it's not. It was robbed by the baby boomer generation who fell for the manipulation
Yeah.
of Martin Luther King and the SCLC and SNCC. They were sold a bill of goods. They fell for it. They engaged in it. And as a result, 70+% of Black children are growing up in single parent households, and we are celebrating degeneracy and decadence and nonsense. We're not taken seriously as a so-called race. We're the laughingstock of the country, of the world.
Of the world.
This
Yeah.
this is just what it is. I mean, like, I don't know. I'm not going to go any further than that, but we need to turn it around. We need to, and it starts with changing our culture. Is where it starts. It starts
So
with men being men and women being virtuous women. We don't have any claim to freedom or triumph until we begin to take ourselves seriously and our culture seriously.
what do you consider a first step?
A first step is getting right with God, quite frankly. We can't do it on our own.
Right.
Left to our own devices, we're utter failures. If we think that we can build a strong community and leave God out of it, we're woefully mistaken. We saw this with the Tower of Babel when the people collectivized themselves and tried to build this tower to the heavens, and they tried to do so apart from God's uh, guidance and his order. And so, what did he do? He divided the languages, and they dispersed across the earth. And so, this notion that we can build a strong family, a strong community without God, we're woefully mistaken. Um, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a business owner, I'm all these things, but my connection to God is what makes me a better father
Go.
than I would be otherwise, a better husband than I would be otherwise, a better business owner than I would be otherwise. And so you have a lot of people who are playing who don't believe in God, who don't worship God, a lot of people who are playing and they seem from the surface to be good businessmen, good husbands, good fathers, but really they're empty inside. And then two, you realize that it's for some kind of carnal or selfish gain, when the reality is I enjoy being a good husband for the beauty of it, because it's like, as a worshipful being who is made in God's image, I get to pour myself out for my wife and for my kids and things of this nature. So it's just a different mindset, and I think unless and until we as a culture get back to God, we will never move forward.
I don't. You said first step. I think really it's kind of the only option right now. We'll see. What we have right now, what we witness in our school systems, what we witness in our judicial systems. God is gone. There's no, directory where you'll see, God said this according to this law. So
Mhm.
state, church have been, completely dispersed of each other, and we'll see what happens. I'm in DC now. I got here early. There are a lot of people already here. um, Things are, and there are more Black people than I expected to see this early here too. So I think it's gonna be a good time.
Nice.
But it's gonna be freezing outside too. I just went and bought a snowsuit because it's supposed to be like 12 degrees, and I'm like, did they do this on purpose,
How
to
close are you
freeze
going to
it
be
down?
to the podium?
I'm gonna be pretty close. I'm gonna be seated. So
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
Yeah. So,
Nice.
but probably I'll need to stand just to keep warm, because just sitting there in that coat,
You think
you
something's going to pop off?
no, not at all. It's the last thing that I worry about. I'm going to be there to witness the biggest political comeback in American history. I'm going to witness now, after he is sworn in, all the people that he played ball with. Um, is it that he's going to retract on some of the concessions that he made, to win? Because at the end of the day, and I'll tell everybody over and over, the key for Trump was to win. So he had to play ball with Israel. He had to play balls with the tech boys. He had to play ball with everybody because the
Mhm.
goal was to win. Now, is he going to put America first? That will be, that remains to be seen. And I think, we'll see that when he starts making the executive orders at 2 p.m. on January 20th. So I'm looking
What do
forward
you
to that.
what do you think the conversation between he and Obama was about at the Jimmy Carter funeral?
Um, I think Obama needs to make friends because their reign is over. If you are going to have any outside of from Black people who are still stuck, in a mental plantation of the Democrat policy, they need to make friends. Michelle, what did Jimmy Carter do to Michelle Obama? I just thought that was just tasteful, classless, and then her publicly stating now she's not going to be at the inauguration. This is not about you. This is about the country. You have a duty as the first lady who served an 8-year term with your husband to follow through on your first lady duties. So, I think, and Black people saying, I'm with her, this is what she's supposed to do. She's standing on business. No, she's not. She's standing on emotions and feelings, and it's going to hurt them both in the end. I think Obama knows he's going to need some friends out there because everything is about to change. If you look at Trump's cabinet, it's not about what friends say who should be where and who should be doing what. Trump is not playing. You don't see the usual suspects in there anymore because he doesn't trust anybody who's been in big government. Everything is going to change. And we'll see that with these executive orders. We'll see how serious he will be about putting America first.
Did you get the impression, such as some others, that when Obama and Trump were sitting there yucking it up like old friends, that perhaps we're all just being played and that there's no real such thing as right and left, and that when it comes to the politicians, they're all on the same team and they're kind of engaging in this kind of political theater to get people to go along with an agenda that they are not fully aware of? Did you get that sense, or did you see
I
it
didn't get that
differently?
at all. What I do know about President Trump is he's a master negotiator. He's
Mhm.
like, he understands how to make his way, how to get the deal done, how to play nice, how to win. And we've all witnessed that. I don't see him as having the roots of the government history that these other people who were put in place, especially Joe Biden and Kamala. He doesn't carry that baggage. That's not in his veins. So
Mhm.
he will, and the American people knew it too, which is why he won by a landslide twice. I do believe the map in 2020 was exactly the same as it was in 2024.
I do too.
And I just feel like we now have to hold him accountable. I think he'll be doing more so of the right thing because this last term will be his legacy. It'll speak louder than all of the businesses that he's made, all the billions that he's made. These 4 years coming up, this term is going to speak to what is cemented about him in history outside of this political comeback. I look forward to seeing it. It's all going to come down to these executive orders because that means January 21, everything changes pending that he puts that hard pin down and starts eradicating, like he said, closing the border, all of these trans, gender identity situations. There's taxes. Like, let's see you sign it on January 20th, and I guarantee you, every American who went into the polling booth and put that X on his name, they're about to find out who President Trump really is. And I'm waiting. So I reserve, any, judgment because I'm waiting for 2 o'clock on January 20th. And then, these alter events happening because of Martin Luther King Day, so on and so forth, also in DC. That's not going to happen because guess what? Black people are not going to stand out in that cold. They don't, that's not going to happen. So that's going to flop. That's going to flop. People coming to the inauguration are tried and true, wrapped up, in hunting jumpsuits and, whatever they can do to stay warm. But we will be out there front and center because we have to support the man who is in charge of help turning this country around. So if you don't support him, what can you expect out of it? And I'm surprised, like, how are you not there? Why are you not going? What's going on?
I'm trying to get this movie made, so
I know that's right. Focus on the goal. Focus on the goal.
yeah, we all have to play our part. We all have to play our part.
Gee, I cannot see the comments, and I know they're like 3,000 some odd. Can you put the comments up because I do know people would have questions for Chad. Oh, there we go. There are the comments. So Democrat baby boomers are responsible. Republican boomers did not buy into that. That's what Suze said. What do you think about that?
I think so. I'm going to attempt to answer that question actually in our film, where we make the point that this mythology is widespread It just is. It doesn't matter right or left. We all went to the same schools. We got the same education. We enjoy the same artists. We watch the same movies. And you mentioned the CIA earlier. The CIA has a vested interest in formulating entertainment and the kind of messaging that we receive through entertainment in our subconsciousness. The fact that Martin Luther King is celebrated by both the so-called right and the so-called left is a testament to this fact. I mean, Trump himself, on numerous occasions, lauded Martin Luther King as a great man and all these things. He basically doubled down on enshrining MLK Day as a national holiday. He kowtows and acquiesces to the Congressional Black Caucus. Now, could that be the fact that he is playing the long game, as you put it earlier? Could very well be. But the fact is, when you look at the fact that such persons as Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder and many of your favorite conservative or Republican influencers have been on the record and still are on the record to this very day, singing the praises of Martin Luther King, who was a Trojan horse to this country. He basically rejiggered and shifted the transition or the trajectory of our country to send down this road to Marxist globalism. That was Martin Luther King, and to praise him is to put your blessing on this new trajectory. Not only that, he basically ruined and turned into a catastrophe Black culture. And so, if you are a white American, you shouldn't be celebrating. Who loves this country, you shouldn't be celebrating Martin Luther King. If you are a Black American who cares about preserving your culture and getting back to traditional values, you shouldn't be celebrating Martin Luther King. And so, again, it wasn't just the Democrat boomers. It was also, to some degree, Republican boomers as well. They all get the smoke as far as I'm concerned. Now,
Right.
I'm not trying to come for them merely for the sake of coming for them. I'm basically trying to educate people because to the extent that you lose hold of our true American heritage and you buy into this mythology, you are going down this trajectory without realizing you're going down this trajectory. And so hopefully by being educated, you can reconsider what our American heritage is and get back to that. It's not about Republican versus Democrat when it comes to particularly to this subject matter. It's about the truth versus the lie.
So when you say getting back to that, how will we go forward getting back? Like, where is the getting back in the progress? Because when we're in this age of technology and AI and short attention spans, everybody's just busy and distracted. People are becoming what is it called, HDHD or whatever it is, just because their brains are just so flooded with information 24/7. We're losing reality in that. So where's the getting back and moving forward? Where's the correlation in that?
That's a very good question, but there's no basic answer to it. It's a multifold approach. Um, there's many things that are going on right now. Our government and our administrative state has waged a psychological war against its own citizens. And it's doing so through the education system, through entertainment, and through other means, through fake news. This is what our government is doing, and they're projecting and gaslighting when they accuse alternative media such as the Hood's Conservative and other such platforms of spreading misinformation. They're projecting what they are themselves doing. Another thing that they're doing is they're poisoning us through our food,
Biological warfare.
yeah,
Yeah.
biological warfare, through vaccinations and our food, and other such things. And so this is a wide scale thing that's going on. And so to the question of what does it mean to get back, it means, once again, getting back right with God, family formation. It means not subjecting your kids to these crazy vaccine schedules. It means eating better. It means not consuming much of this trash entertainment that we're getting by way of television and a lot of the music that's out there, it means um, it means not sending your kids to the public schools. It means et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And to the point that you made about us living in this era of the technological revolution, it means taking advantage of the fact that we are in the age of information. The information is there. The question is, uh, will people look into that information to figure out uh, what really happened over the course of the 20th century and in the last quarter of the 21st century? Because the more you know, the better off you'll be. And so it's about, that's what I think it means to get back. It means to not be such a crash dummy for the government and to become your own self, become your own person.
Well, I mean, I think you've put together spectacular, dossiers on what has happened and informing people on what really happened, not what they thought happened. You've actually put the correction on history multiple times. And I'm so looking forward to this. G, I would love for you to put up Chad's butter link. All of you donate. Also, put up Chad's X link so everybody can find him on X at Chad O. Jackson. When do you think this screening will be in Atlanta?
Yeah, so I'm looking at either a date in late February or early March. So it's fast approaching, but as soon as I have the details together, Trev, I'll give you those details so that way you'll
I
have
will be
access to it.
promoting it left and right. It's about time
Yeah.
because I've been, I didn't ever think this day would come where somebody would actually get up and say, you know what, you guys have it all wrong. This man, how my grandfather said it was a bad man. And my grandfather didn't call too many men bad men, but it was definitely Martin Luther King. And I heard some of his army buddies as well, just going at it. Man, I wish I would go. My wife my wife went down there with her aunt, just stupid. And they will tell you it was more women than men because the men didn't want to go. Like these are the stories that I heard growing up. And so I am so excited for this.
And let me just say, I know we're wrapping up, but let me just say this real quick to that point. And I meant to make this point earlier when it came to the men who weren't willing to participate in this movement. Don't, and I'm saying this to those who are listening, don't take from that these black men were docile or timid or afraid. They certainly weren't. Again, notice what Trev said. They weren't willing to get beat up across the head to push this movement. That's not to say that they were laying down and being cowards when it came to protecting their own affairs. You can look all throughout the 20th century, and black men were not pushovers. They stood up for what they believed in, and they were willing to protect themselves and protect their families if it came down to that. This notion that blacks were just docile and just singing "We Shall Overcome" the whole time is not the case at all. In fact, because black men were strong-minded, strong-willed, they actually got a lot of respect from their white neighbors, especially in the South. This Yassa boss, a Yassa, like that's not like that's a fake image of the Southern black man that's given to us by Hollywood. The black men, the black men in my family certainly weren't that way.
Right. They all approached each other as, hey, Mr. Johnson, hey, Mr. It was Mr. White, Black, whatever. I remember that. Right. I remember all of it. You are exactly right. You just brought that back to my mind. That's actually it was fake, but that's all they showed people. It's all that they showed people. And another thing that so I remember my grandfather's army buddies coming over, and they all had businesses. They all found a way to take care of their families. And then they all got together to pool and do their little man side businesses on their own. My grandfather woke up every morning at 4:30 to make sure we had homemade biscuits, bacon, eggs, pancakes every single morning. He did not miss a morning because he was never sick. So, I grew up knowing that this is what a family life is supposed to be. And if you're not,
Mhm.
if you don't have the time, and I'm a very busy person, sometimes, I don't get to do it, but I make sure that I will teach my children how to do it for themselves and to do it for their own. But Chad, G, did we get Chad's link up, his X link? I want to make sure that people click right now. There he is. Chad at Chad O. Jackson. Click that link, follow Chad. He's a wealth of information. Like I said, one of my favorite conservatives because it's well versed, it's well investigated. I look at Chad as an investigator of Black history, and he's the one who, in my opinion, is making a historical correction for Black America. And you will not be wasting your time. You are definitely going to learn something. And when you hear it, it's going to make sense to you. So hopefully you'll pay attention, stick around, follow Chad. If you're following Chad, you're going to wake up. There's no person that I know that has spent any amount of time looking into the narratives that Chad is bringing, as compared as in comparison to ones that we've been taught. Everything turns around and it makes sense. And I appreciate you, Chad. I think you're one of the greatest out there. You were talking about conservative influencers. I think the conservative influencer out here, they're punks. All of them are following an agenda because they're monetized and they need to get paid. They got to pay their rent. X has become their job, and they are empty without that blue check. They are empty. They are nobodies. They're the people who are nobody in real life, and X has given them a platform, and now they believe that they're somebody. If you're not
Mhm.
doing anything in real life, you're still a nobody. So X is a great platform for information. We can get things to 150 million people in 15 minutes, but at the same time, it's not real. So Chad O. Jackson is real. And I want to thank you so much for coming on because you are so awesome. I know it takes a lot of work because I see your work and I know how detailed it is. I just want to share, what you do and what you've done with everybody because it's so informative and it's so important and it's so right. So I can't speak highly enough of you. Thank you so much. I totally appreciate you. Thank you for coming on. You're awesome.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
No problem. Thank you guys for joining us. Laverne will be back next week. I don't know where Judge went, but thank you guys for coming in for the Hood Conservative. My name is Trevian Kutti. Thank you for allowing me to host in place of Laverne Spicer. And we'll be back same time next week, Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Thank you so much. Thank you, G.
Hi, I'm Laverne Spicer, and I'm asking for your support today. Thousands of Americans struggle to get food, and they wonder where their next meal is going to come from. But I'm here, been working with them for over 25 years to provide food to people that need it the most, right here at our community food bank. So today, I'm asking you for your support. Please provide a contribution to help make a real difference in our community and to help us feed people. And you can do it right here. Donate today on Cash App. And you will see the link above.
Hey, hey.